Today on LawNext, we're going to tackle some of the big questions about what is the real value of AI for legal professionals, and can AI truly lead to a fundamental shift in the nature of legal work? These are questions that Nik Reed has been thinking about in one form or another for the past 15 years. Nik is CEO of Knowable, a legal technology company devoted to helping enterprises bring order and organization to their executed agreements. He became CEO last November after joining the company 5 years ago to lead its product research and development. But his journey in legal tech goes back 15 years, beginning at Stanford Law School, where he co-founded the legal research startup Ravel with classmate Daniel Lewis in 2012. Their vision back then was to create more powerful, thoughtfully designed tools for lawyers by leveraging natural language processing and AI. After LexisNexis acquired Ravel in 2017, Nik moved into strategic product management there before joining Knowable in 2019. With his background in languages, he speaks 5 of them, Nik brings a unique perspective to the challenge of teaching AI the language of law. He joins me today to discuss Knowable's generative AI suite, Ask Knowable, explore takeaways from the recent Legal Week conference where he was a speaker, and examine how AI is reshaping the legal profession at what Nik believes is truly an exciting time for legal technology. I'm Bob Ambrogi, and this is LawNext, the podcast that features the innovators and entrepreneurs who are driving what's next in law. Before we get to that conversation, please take a moment to hear from the sponsors who so generously support our podcast. Your specialized law practice deserves specialized software. MerisCase is the legal practice management solution built exclusively for workers' compensation, employment and labor, and insurance defense firms. Every feature, from intelligent document management to precision time tracking and seamless payment reconciliation, is designed around how you actually work. Stop adapting to generic software and start experiencing what true practice management software should be. Transform your firm's efficiency at meriscase.com. That's MERUS case.com. You didn't go to law school to waste time writing and responding to discovery requests. Never waste time on discovery again with BriefPoint. BriefPoint drafts your discovery responses and requests for documents within minutes of your first sign-in. BriefPoint is the most reliable discovery drafting solution on the market, and it works right out of the box. Get your first document drafted by going to briefpoint.ai and clicking Get Started. No credit card required. BriefPoint. Draft what matters, automate the rest. Legal Week returns to New York City March 9th through 12th, 2026 at its new venue, North Javits Center. Save the date for the 1 week where more than 6,500 legal professionals gather together to gain actionable insights, spotlight the latest tech, and explore emerging trends. Mark your calendars for 4 days of tracks, workshops, keynotes, state-of-the-industry updates, and premier networking. Legal Week tackles topics such as the future of legal AI, data privacy, discovery innovation, leadership, and much more, all while offering deep dives into the latest legal technology. Learn more at www.legalweekshow.com. Now let's get to today's conversation. Nik Reed, welcome to LawNext.
Hey, Bob. Fun to be here.
Good to see you. I think we were even going to try and catch up sooner after Legal Week. We were both at Legal Week a couple of weeks ago, and schedules and other things got in our way. So I'm glad we're finally able to catch up and talk a little bit. How are you doing?
Well, it's actually a good day for me, and lucky that we had a little bit of time because I'm just over my post-Legal Week cold. And I was the lucky one. About I think 4 out of 5 people from my team came out of Legal Week with COVID, so that was still there. And I just had a cold, knock on wood. But until about yesterday or the day before, I was sniffling and sneezing from the Hilton to home.
Well, I'm glad you're feeling better. I mean, it's the thing these days, right? I mean, it's like I get so anxious about going to conferences anymore because I feel like every time I go to a conference, I come back with something. This week, knock on wood, somehow I didn't get anything at Legal Week or at ABA Tech Show the week after. But my son did get sick. The son who works with me on this podcast, he got sick at ABA Tech Show. So there you have it.
Yeah, still around.
Yeah.
Wow.
So a lot I want to talk about. I want to talk about Legal Week and some of your thoughts there, and talk more generally about generative AI in the legal space these days. But I feel like we should kind of get the preliminaries out of the way for some of the listeners who may not be familiar with you in terms of your kind of legal tech name, rank, and serial number. So why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, cool. So, and hello, everyone. If you don't know me, my name is Nik Reed. I am currently the CEO of a company called Knowable. Knowable is the executed agreements company. What that means is we take executed agreements, contracts that are signed, finished, and we help large enterprise organize them and access them. So we are not a CLM. Sometimes we have to define ourselves by a negative, but we are not a CLM. We are a kind of post-execution contract management and knowledge company. We can talk more about that later, but just so how did I come to this company? I always kind of say jokingly, but not jokingly, despite myself, I've been in legal tech for 15 years now. And it started as a law school student, actually, at Stanford in 2010. My then friend, and then my friend, then co-founder, Daniel Lewis.
I was going to say, he's not your friend anymore? Is that what happened?
Still my friend. My always friend, but also became my co-founder. Tapped me on my shoulder one day, and he had been having an idea, and really was a frustration that was about legal technology. And he had this, and if you go back to 2010, different world of technology that was available to lawyers, actually radically different world. And he was really frustrated with the tools that we were being trained to use, especially when we were summaring at law firms. And he came to me and said, Nik, there's got to be a better way. And here we are at Stanford, the epicenter of what's happening with big data, AI, machine learning, NLP. Couldn't we build something that's more powerful, more thoughtfully designed that lawyers really liked using? And so that began a kind of escapade into a company that became Ravel. And so Daniel and I founded and launched Ravel in 2012. We built Ravel. I had a lot of roles. We called me the CEE back then, Bob, chief of everything else. Daniel ran sales for the most part, and I ran everything else. And Daniel was kind of our figurehead, presence, visionary, but we worked on everything together, really. There was two of us, eventually 5, eventually 30, 40. And then we got acquired by LexisNexis in 2017. And so kind of the next phase of my journey in legal technology is when we were acquired by LexisNexis, I took on a strategic product management role and helped launch a product context that was kind of Ravel in LexisNexis Reborn. Worked on other products and a lot of the AI features that are kind of throughout LexisNexis products, eventually moving to Knowable, which is a company that Lexis was the primary investor in and now owns as well. So long version of I've been kind of not purposefully in legal tech for the last 15 years of my life. And really the cool part, Bob, and where we get to today is what I think I've brought and what I really enjoy is I'm really into languages. I speak 5 languages. I grew up in a French school in San Francisco. And to me, law is a language. And a lot of the art of what we're doing with AI and law is working to help teach AI the language that is the law. And if you do that, you can get really cool benefits. And I think we're just we're at the most exciting time in history for legal technology because of what AI is providing us with.
And Daniel was on this podcast just about a year ago, and you were supposed to be on it, but then because of scheduling couldn't make it, to talk about something related to the Ravel days, which was this thing called the Case Law Access Project, which Ravel sponsored and worked with Harvard Law to basically create this database of all U.S. case law, digitize and create this database of all U.S. case law. This incredibly ambitious scanning and
Yeah.
coding project that resulted in the largest set of U.S. case law ever, and that is still being put to good use today by any number of organizations.
No, and Bob, and we have good reason to believe a lot of the foundation models were able to take all that case law, and a lot of their legal knowledge comes from the Case Law Access Project, which is such a cool kind of benefit that we had the nuggets of the idea that was possible, but we were working on really, really small language models in 2012 and 2015. We couldn't imagine that these large language models would come, consume all that case law, and be able to answer a lot of questions about U.S. law, which is great.
Yeah, yeah. And I don't know if this is a little bit in the weeds, but Axiom actually spun off back in, was it 2018, 2019? I mean, Axiom, but Knowable spun off from Axiom back in 2018, I think it was 2019.
2019, yeah.
2019. And that there's also, you operate as a joint venture with LexisNexis, is that right? Is that?
Yeah, so the story of kind of Knowable's origin, which is cool. It's it's a bunch of startup founders from different walks of life coming together. But Mark Harris and Alec Gettle, who had founded Axiom, noticed that when Axiom was going to IPO, it eventually got sold to a private equity firm. That there was these other businesses within Axiom that wanted to be their own businesses, and Knowable was a army of Axiom attorneys hand coding contracts, and then over time, going from an Excel spreadsheet to Power BI to a thing that was like living software, but without a lot of the power that software brought. And so they realized that it really wanted to be a standalone web platform and a software company, and it needed to benefit from a lot of machine learning and AI. And so they spun it out with LexisNexis, where Lexis had the software and AI knowledge, and the Knowable team had all of this knowledge about contracts in large enterprise and what people at large enterprises needed to know about their contracts. So a joint venture was formed between Mark and Alec and LexisNexis, and that's when I joined at the moment of the formation of the joint venture.
Yeah. And you, more recently, well, right around the time you became CEO, Knowable rolled out kind of this sort of suite of generative AI products that have been developing called Ask Knowable. Would you want to just kind of briefly describe what that's about and what you introduced that was in November?
Yeah. So we, in many ways, I think we've been patient, and we've been purposefully patient, kind of entering the world of generative AI, because personally, I really wanted to get it right. It's actually funny. There was we're going to talk about Legal Week a little bit too, Bob, and Rob Lowe was the keynote speaker. And
of course, because he's famous in the legal technology world.
Very famous legal technologist. But actually, one thing we learned is his dad is an 84-year-old practicing attorney in Dayton, Ohio, nonetheless, in the kind of birthland of LexisNexis. He's a recovered alcoholic, which a lot of the lawyers in the room kind of were appreciated. They're tied to law. And most importantly, he played a lawyer in a lot of TV shows. So on the West Wing and others, he says sometimes he tells people he went to, like, I forget what it was, but it was like Duke Law School, and then he remembers that was actually just a character he played. But no, I think that one of the things he said that's an interesting analogy, and it comes back to Knowable and Ravel and kind of where I've been working in legal tech, is he said the world of film was going to this kind of binary situation where the movies are either really high end, and his analogy was like either it's Hermes or Target, but there's nothing in between. Either you're doing really artful, thoughtful, considerate movies with a lot of really hard work in them that are really elegant and beautiful, or you're doing these mass market things. And he said, he doesn't mind that those are the two options. But I was thinking about that in legal tech, and I think that the analogy is really apt. And for Knowable and Ravel, I've been working on these products where we're trying to do something pretty targeted very, very well. Mm-hmm. And that's hard. And so with Ask Knowable, when we launched our first application of kind of using generative AI and LLMs within Knowable, I wanted to be really considered about the use cases we were solving for and where in the application we were solving for them. So Ask Knowable is now available. We've got attorneys using it. We're learning cool things every day, but it's basically taking the really pristine metadata that we create at Knowable. So we have a whole AI engine with human in the loop quality control that creates the data that we kind of extract and create from the contracts that are our clients' contracts.
Machine learning AI, right?
Machine learning AI, traditional AI. Yeah. No, it's my old school AI.
Yeah, old school.
ML, good old ML and NLP algorithms that we've been developing for years with lots and lots of training data. Those combined with, just a lot of really good software. And I think people underestimate the importance still to this day of just good software, workflow, all the non-sexy things that help make software applications really work. So we've got a lot of that in the background, along with very targeted human in the loop intervention at key points to create really high quality data. Because at the end of the day, you still need humans if you want really high quality data, especially in the law. The law is complicated. Legal language is complicated. One of the funny themes of Legal Week that I would love this to be true. And if people are really doing it, I'm excited for them. But a lot of folks are just saying, give us 100,000 documents and we'll answer all these really complicated legal questions. I haven't seen that be possible. I think if you have a very pristine and closed environment, so that means not a lot of duplicates, you've got the final document that matters, you've got really good metadata that you can infuse into the LLM as questions are being asked. And you still need a team of lawyers and data scientists working together to inform. I kind of call it, it's teaching, not training, because you can't train these large language models. They're way too big. It's like the Titanic and trying to move it. You just can't change these things. They've consumed so much information. But at the level of prompt engineering, you can infuse them with knowledge. And it's a little bit like law school and like Socratic method in a funny, weird way, but you're putting in this information, you're teaching them the operative nature of the law, and that's all happening in the background. So it's still a lot of work. And I think this is, to get to Ask Knowable, the reason we kind of waited until recently is, quite frankly, there was a lot of hard work in making the answers and getting it right. It's the most fun work. It's the work where lawyers and data scientists and product managers and engineers are teaching each other, learning from each other. And then you're teaching these large language models. And, at first you really don't know what kind of results you're going to get.
Right.
So today Ask Knowable is live. Our clients can interact with their contracts in the way they always wanted to, which is asking questions and getting answers. And maybe, Bob, as we kind of talk about where legal tech has come from, 2010 to today, I think one of the most exciting kind of new innovations is that you can talk to software the way you speak to your assistant or your counterparty, your peer. And just that is so transformational and so exciting.
Yeah, I want to talk about that. And I know you talked a little bit about that in your own talk at Legal Week, but I want to go back to that Hermes versus Target analogy, because one of the key things that stood out to me at Legal Week, and I spent a lot of my Legal Week just sitting in briefings with vendors telling me what they're up to and what they're developing and what's going on. And in briefing after briefing, it was as if I was sitting talking to the same vendor with a different product name. And what they were all saying is talking about how their product has kind of, I don't think they've quite put it this way, but has gone from being a sort of a point solution to being an all-in-one solution, in the sense that now with generative AI, like LexisNexis, for example. LexisNexis, I sat through an hour press briefing with them. And I'm not saying this to be critical of them in any way, but they sat through an hour press briefing with them in which they never used the words legal research. They don't, I mean, that's, what we think of legal research. We think of LexisNexis as a legal research company. They don't talk about legal research anymore. They talk about, data intelligence, data information, data insights. They talk about contract management. They talk about document management. They talk about, again, querying your documents, that kind of thing. Go to Thomson Reuters, same exact thing.
Yeah.
And then go to somebody like, say, NetDocuments, which is in fact a document management system. And they don't talk about document management really anymore. They talk about the fact that having access to documents makes them better suited, better equipped, better positioned to provide some of the insights and capabilities driven by generative AI. But for all of these different vendors, they're all basically saying we should sort of be your general source of truth for what you're doing in your legal workflow on a day-to-day basis. You can we can be your home base in a sense. Whatever you're doing in your workflow, start with us and we can put you into your document management, or we can put you into your contracts, we can put you into drafting, we can put you into research. And I don't know where that leaves us if every legal tech company thinks they're heading in that sort of direction of being the one source of truth for all things in legal practice. I don't know. Do you have any? Does that make any sense? And do you have any thoughts on that?
No, it really does. And I think it's back to the Hermes or Target thing, right? And it's like the existential. I think it's the existential risk for a lot of legal tech companies. Now, to Lexis and TR's credit, they're probably two of the few companies that might be able to do everything for everyone, because they actually have all the data and all the tools, all the armies of engineers and lawyers. So I do worry.
Yeah, and again, I'm not saying that to minimize what they're doing in any way. It just struck me that especially from a consumer point of view, if I'm at a large law firm, I'm thinking, well, which direction do I go? Do I start with my DMS and build Gen AI on top of that? Do I start with a more of a data-driven company and work back to my documents from there? I don't know.
Yeah, well, I think there's a couple of things that are still true to this day with Gen AI, and we all need to be cognizant of them. One is it's still hard to build really good products, especially for lawyers. And it takes a lot of hard work. And anyone that's telling you that that's not the truth is probably already, a product that you shouldn't be using, because it is really hard and you've got to do it the right way. I think the Hermes analogy is right. Like if you want to build something that's really, really good at what you're trying to achieve, you want to find a company that's really focused and trying to get one or two things right, not everything right. I do think generative AI it's so enticing, this idea of, having your AI agent, your assistant that can just do everything for you. But it's like, whoever had a paralegal that could do everything? You have different paralegals that are good at different things. You have different associates that are good at different things. We got contract associates and litigation associates. So I think, we have to remember that with AI, you still need to do a lot of work around the generative AI and using multiple models, figuring out what some models are better at than other, using them together in the right way to get it to work. So I think the other big thing, Bob, that I hear a lot of that I'm hearing a little bit less, but it was really made me nervous a year ago if people were really serious, was all these law firms and companies wanting to build their own AI use cases, assistants, whatever, products on top of their information. And I get the desire to do that, but AI is still software. It has to be built. It has to be supervised. It has to be monitored. It has to be improved. You still need a lot of people. Maybe you need less to do certain kinds of tasks, but to do it well, you still need a lot of people.
And it's not build it and forget it. You have to keep at it.
And it keeps living. And these models are getting updated. On my panel, Bob, like one of the topics I brought up is that the CEO of Anthropic, one of the foundation model companies, was on the Lex Fridman podcast recently. And one of his comments was, every new model kind of comes with its own personality. And sometimes they can be 10,000 questions in at Anthropic, and they still really haven't figured out, Claude 3.7's personality traits versus Claude 3.5. That has implications for us as end users of these things. Right. And so you want companies that have armies that are paying attention to these things, that are quality ranking answers, that are paying attention to the differences in answers as the technology is evolving. So I think that's one thing to answer your question, is, a generalist AI assistant is a really cool idea, and I think people are excited about it. There are very few companies positioned to do that well. Also, it's still hard, and you should make sure the companies you're talking to are acknowledging that it's still hard and that they're really focused on use cases that matter to you. And the last thing, Bob, which has been true and will always be true, is garbage in, garbage out. If you put a lot of dirty data into these things, you're gonna get really bad answers. The scary part is that they give you bad answers very convincingly. And so I think like our ability to distinguish a bad answer is harder now. We're not really trained yet to know when an LLM is trying to purposefully please us while not, and it's not that it's lying, it's just trying to please us. So it may just give us the amount of the answer that it thinks will make you happier.
Yeah.
Which maybe not be the entire complete answer.
Yeah. Does that target analogy carry over into the contracts space? I mean, there are, again, one of the predominant sets of companies at Legal Week this year and in recent years has been the contract lifecycle management companies that, in some ways, I guess you could say, are the targets of contracting, in the sense that they want to provide a platform that gets you all the way from negotiating and drafting all the way through managing the executed contracts and everything else that goes along with it. Is that viable? Is that doable, or is that the right approach to take with regard to contracts?
I kind of think still what I've always thought, which is contract lifecycle is actually really big, and there are lots of steps, and from approvals and permissions to redlining to finding and replacing templates and template comparison, all the way through to executed agreements, what's in them, what kind of questions, managing those agreements versus repapering those agreements. There's lots of different activities that takes place with contracts, and they kind of have different solutions at different points in time. I'm very much a fan of putting together the best, like finding Hermes, but for everything you need to do and kind of cobbling it together. I know that's expensive. It's hard. But if you're, without naming competitors or potential competitors, I think it is a fallacy to believe that just because you drop generative AI on top of a repository, all of a sudden you're going to do all of these things that we've all been trying to do for a really long time really well, and it's just like the magic has been unlocked instantaneously. I think there are lots of cool things you can do now that you couldn't do before, but yeah, I think it's probably more target than Hermes in a lot of those use cases. And then to take it a step further, Bob, I don't know, some of them are saying they'll answer your litigation questions. Contract companies are saying they can answer litigation questions, and you know why? Because they read the Harvard case law repository, but that doesn't answer all litigation questions.
Yeah.
It's nothing they're doing. It's so I think, for all of our listeners, hopefully you're being thoughtful about these things and using products for what they're intended to do, and still really trying to like nail use cases that you have. And I don't think that's changed. What is cool about agentic AI though, Bob, and where I think assistance, and this is what Lexis is doing with Protege, and I'm still very closely involved with LexisNexis, and Protege is fundamentally a layer on top of so many different AI services that Lexis has access to, and it does a lot of things, but maybe the most important thing is just deciding which service it needs to get to answer the question that you've asked. And so that's kind of why I said, those biggest companies are probably in the best position to do this well, because not because they're just going to create one LLM to solve everything. It's because they're the interface LLM that you talk to, like the agent manager that's managing all the other agents is actually just funneling your question to the right place really intelligently.
Yeah. We've been exploring how AI is transforming the legal landscape and the balance between targeted solutions versus comprehensive platforms. You've heard Nik share his insights into what makes generative AI actually work in legal practice and how it relates to his journey from Ravel to Knowable. When we come back, I want to dive into Nik's presentation at Legal Week and get his thoughts on the current state of AI that actually works for the industry. But first, please take this opportunity to learn about the sponsors who so generously support this podcast. If you're tired of trying to make your specialized practice fit into generic legal software, it's time for Case. Built specifically for workers' compensation, employment and labor and insurance defense firms, Case delivers tailor-made features that understand your firm's unique challenges. With automated document workflows, templates, and custom fields, you'll cut through administrative chaos and gain a competitive edge. Join the growing number of specialized firms that have discovered the power of purpose-built software at meruscase.com. That's MERUSCASE.com. In an ever-evolving legal market, there's one thing that stands the test of time: great client service. That's where LexReception comes in. Their agents are available 24/7, 365 days a year to answer calls, qualified leads, onboard new clients, and schedule appointments. With bilingual agents and software that can seamlessly integrate with your current workflow, you'll never miss a call or future case. With over 12 years of experience, LexReception gives lawyers the time and freedom to focus on core legal work and helps them grow their firms, all while building their reputation for great client service. Check them out today at LexReception.com. Voice recognition is great for quick texts or emails, but when accuracy matters, AI guesses. As you well know, in law, guessing isn't an option. With SpeakRight, real human transcriptionists deliver accurate, professionally formatted legal documents in about 3 hours, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The free mobile app provides instant access to trained legal secretaries, plus Clio integration for seamless filing. It's like carrying a full support staff on your phone. LawNext listeners, claim your $100 free credit right now at speakright.com/LawNext. Welcome back to LawNext. I'm Bob Ambrogi, and I'm continuing my conversation with Nik Reed, the CEO of Knowable. As we return to the conversation, I want to pick up on a thread Nik mentioned earlier, his talk at Legal Week, and explore that a bit further. So I asked Nik to expand a little bit on his topic and what he said. Let's rejoin that conversation. Every time you talk, there's like 10 threads I want to pull to explore a little bit further. But I did want to go back to Legal Week and to the talk you gave there. You spoke there, and I wonder if you could kind of expand a little bit on your topic and what you said.
Yeah. So the name of our panel was Gen AI that actually works, and not without pun. The idea is that I wanted to engage with leaders in corporate contracting. So we had the head of one of the heads of legal operations at PayPal, who worked at Cisco for 15 years or so prior to PayPal. So she's got incredibly, historic, detailed views of how AI has been used by big companies and what's changed over the years. We had the general counsel for North America for LexisNexis, and she's been using our tool for a while. Her team was the first team that we turned on to Ask Knowable, so they were kind of in alpha, and now they've gone general availability, which is cool. And then we had the head of commercial contracting, corporate contracting at Capgemini, giant kind of consulting firm but he works on their internal contracts. But so he's seeing this volume of contracting, that's probably hard for most of us to imagine. And what I wanted what we spoke about is actual times where they've used AI tools that worked, and then also times where it didn't work. and what happened. The framework, though, and I can share some of those, but before hopping into that, the framework that I led with, and this has been something, and Bob, you probably remember, because this goes back to 2015, 2017 Ravel days, when we were speaking about what Ravel did. And, I think maybe one of the funny things, and this is Legal Week in 2015, if you rewind, AI was a dirty word in the legal industry. We wouldn't say those two letters together. We used to say, we're using big data techniques in the small data world, and it works really, really well. We use machine learning, natural language processing. But if you said you were using AI to a room full of lawyers in 2015, they just shut the door and tell you to go home.
Even worse if you said you were doing it in the cloud. But...
Or in the cloud. You didn't say the cloud either. That's some PTSD, Bob, going through those early cloud assessments with law firms. And the world's changed really fast, which is exciting. So one of the ideas that I had all the way back then was that we had gotten into a third wave of legal technology, and the first two waves. So to understand the third wave, you kind of have to understand the first two waves. And what I tried to, and the third wave is all about AI and what that does. But to understand how these waves are transforming technology, Mark Harris and I actually came up with this framework over coffee one day, and it's to think about what legal technology has been trying to change for lawyers. And so the first wave was really changing how lawyers do things that they've always done before. And so if you think about, the filing cabinet behind you in your office, or the case law textbooks that made up the libraries at every law firm, the first wave digitized all this information and allowed it to be searchable on the web. It was, the advent of companies like LexisNexis and Westlaw and doc management companies. All these really big companies today use technology to give you access to the information in a really powerful way. The second wave kind of creatively thought about changing who was doing the work. And so the idea was, instead of going to a law firm and paying a really big bill with every single question you have about the law, maybe you could have pools of people trained that work at a company like Axiom or Pangea 3, an offshore legal company. And so you saw all of these companies that were born, Capgemini, all these companies that were born that were doing legal work with different people at a much more kind of affordable rate, hypothetically.
That's at scale.
And at scale, and using technology to allow for that. So the third wave, in 2015, to me, it was about natural language processing. It was about teaching algorithms to understand legal language so that you could create analytics and tools to make lawyers more proactive. So I called it the what. So it's kind of, the three waves are the who, the how, the who, and the what. And I thought the third wave was really potentially transforming what lawyers do. And if you go back to Lex Machina in the early days, Moneyball for lawyers, I think what we were wrong with, we're not changing what lawyers do, maybe, because lawyers aren't going to become baseball players anytime soon. But they're not going to become super proactive in the way we think of. We'd love this world where lawyers are identifying risk before you come to them with a problem. But maybe what AI allows us to do is it allows lawyers to do what they always were supposed to be doing, that which they want to do, and that we're happy to pay them for, which is critical reasoning, using the intelligence that you develop in law school and years of practice to solve really hard problems, because technology created an imbalance. When we digitized all this information, all of a sudden lawyers were responsible for, it was petabytes and now terabytes of data. And it became too much. And now maybe AI can help us restore the balance. And if we achieve that, I think it's super exciting. So that's how I teed it up at Legal Week. And we kind of went into a deep conversation about that. And so I'd ask you, Bob, as I asked the panel, do you think AI can kind of restore the balance to some extent and maybe minimize the amount of rote activity lawyers have had to be doing and allow them to do the more higher value activity that we like to think of lawyers doing?
Yeah, so that's sort of the bespoke lawyering that Susskind's been talking about for a while. Finally allowing lawyers to get back to doing more of that. Yeah, no, certainly I think so. I mean, I think it's certainly what we're seeing so far in terms of applications of generative AI uh, are applications that are streamlining a lot of that rote stuff that lawyers would have done, making it easier for them to get to essential information that they need in order to do the bespoke lawyering, to do the higher end lawyering. Um, so yeah, I think your analysis makes a lot of sense. I mean, I don't know if I totally write off the lawyers as baseball team managers part of it either. I mean, I think there has been certainly some evolution in the idea of lawyers starting to use data more strategically in thinking about cases and their approaches to cases. But that's probably just part of exactly what you're talking about, just part of what they needed to be doing all along and have been doing all along in one form or another.
Well, Daniel, one of the like watershed moments for Ravel when we were kind of building judge analytics, it was a kind of our the tool that won Legal Week and kind of got us a lot of recognition, and it was kind of like a baseball card for every judge in the federal courts, and we could tell you if Judge Coe in the Northern District of California would grant a certain kind of motion, but we were having a hard time explaining that was something that lawyers kind of should have been doing or have done in a certain way for a long time. And we needed a story to support us. And Daniel was reading LBJ's biography at the time, this massive tome. And there was this moment in time, and Daniel wrote this article about it, but where LBJ, I think he was running, it was like for Senate in Texas. And some judge had ruled that he did something or other during the campaign, and his name couldn't be on the ballots, and he could only be a write-in candidate. And obviously LBJ is a very astute politician, so he knew he was going to lose as a write-in candidate. So they had like 2 weeks to get this reversed and overturned so his name could be put on the ballots. And he gets an army of attorneys, and this is the 1950s probably, like in a dark, smoky room filled with books. And they're trying to figure out how to get this reversed. And there was this young attorney from D.C., and he had this crazy idea, and it was basically they had to get the opinion to the appellate level and ruled against what they wanted, because at the circuit court level, the judge that sat over that circuit was this guy's judge. He had clerked for him, and he knew how he was going to get that judge to agree with them. So they did judge analytics the old school way, and you could kind of, forum shop back then, venue shop and judge shop, but they had to find the judge most likely to disagree with them. And they had like limited period of time to get their argument in front of this judge so he would rule against them so they could appeal it to the circuit court judge. They did that. They were successful. LBJ wins the seat, eventually becomes president. And that attorney got elected to the Supreme Court when LBJ was president.
Interesting. So a strategy of winning by losing by winning, winning by losing.
But that was like, but that's judge analytics in practice, right?
Yeah,
it's like, it's the thing attorneys were doing, but it was really hard. And it took armies of people in rooms, and how often could you do that? And so the idea was, could we put that at your fingertips? And that's kind of what this third wave is. And I think that the other part of our talk, Bob, and I think like interesting for the audience and for you is, I thought we were at the kind of apex of the third wave in 2015, and I think we're still riding the wave is the reality. And maybe it's not even crested yet, but this turned out to be a really, really big wave. Sean Fitzpatrick, the CEO of LexisNexis, gave a talk with the Protégé launch at Legal Week. And one of the things he said that really resonated with me is that he thinks it's quite possible that the billable hour will be $10,000 in 5 years.
Right. Yeah. I saw that.
And it's because lawyers will be able to do so much more with their time. If you've got a lot of AI agents that are working really well, it's not because they're just charging you more for the same stuff. It's because they're doing so much more, and it's so valuable. Whether or not that comes to fruition, we'll see. But it's an interesting idea.
Yeah. What about culturally? I mean, what are the obstacles, I guess, to the legal profession really embracing generative AI in a way that's going to move us forward in that direction through that third wave, continue to ride the crest of that third wave? How well are we doing at getting there, and what do we need to do?
Yeah, I think it goes back to what we were speaking about before, which is I really hope that, because we're, if you think about the hype cycle, unfortunately last year, generative AI was so hyped at every conference we went to, everywhere we went, that I think a lot of people thought it was going to be the silver bullet, and it was over. Like
Mm-hmm.
the adventure had ended. Here we go.
Right, right.
You can replace all your associates with an AI bot in the next 2 years, and that's not going to be true. So what I think we need to do as a profession still is realize that we need to have our use. We need to not overestimate the capabilities, and we still have to have really defined goals and use cases that we want the software to help us accomplish, and not try to use it for things that it's not meant to do. Sometimes we gotta see like the queries and things that our team's asking, that people ask these LLMs, and like if you're going into a contract tool that's got a generative AI assistant, don't ask it if God exists. It's probably a bad use of your time and the LLM's time. Ask it contracts questions that you're trying to solve, and use it specifically for those use cases. So I think if we kind of hold to what we've always known, which is there are going to be really good software applications, there are going to be things that are really useful to us, but it's not a silver bullet overnight. We need a little bit of patience, but we also need to learn how to use it. I think that the benefits are going to be amazing. I'm using, I don't know about you, Bob, but I use, like, LLMs have become part of my everyday life. Just, if recently went to Japan on a trip with my family. We took our son for the first time. And one of the things we wanted to do was go see temples in Kyoto. And I remembered a few from when I had been there when I was in my 20s. But I had a chat with, Claude, and asked it what the best temples were. And Google kind of gave me a list, but Claude gave me a list. But the coolest thing I did is I asked it, after I decided on the temples I wanted to visit, I said, I have 2 days. Can you create an itinerary for me for how to do these systematically in 48 hours? And it said, start here, then go to this one. It's a taxi ride away. Go to this one because it's best seen between 12 and 3 when the crowds aren't there. And that is like agentic AI at its best, right? It's like, and if it was a step forward, maybe it would have booked for the 2 places that you needed to call and buy a ticket. It could have done
Yeah.
that for me.
No, I
But
use
I
it all the
love the
time. It's
idea
crazy.
of like organizing my itinerary for me in a really strategic way, instead of me spending hours trying to figure that out, and probably getting it wrong, if it was left to me.
Yeah. I use it all the time. I use, yeah, just yesterday. I still practice law a little bit, and I had an issue come up in which I was trying to figure out every instance in which something was required by Massachusetts law, and I could have sat there for hours researching it, but I went to ChatGPT's deep research, and I said, "Can you tell me every instance in which this is required by Massachusetts law?" And in 10 minutes, I had this detailed spreadsheet with statute and
Yeah.
coverage and what it says, and a link to the. It is amazing, and I haven't gone back and verified yet whether it exhaustively covered everything I wanted
Yeah.
it to, but it sure did a pretty good job. But that kind of raises a question, I think, in the legal context, which is, it's sort of one thing to say, okay, which temple should I visit in Japan? Because you can, even if it's wrong, you're going to have a good vacation, and maybe you miss one or something, but
Yeah.
it's not going to have an impact on somebody's life dramatically. Whereas, lawyers remain so concerned about the trustworthiness of what
Mhm.
results they're getting out of Gen AI. How do lawyers kind of overcome their fear of this? How do they know when, in fact, Gen AI is truly kind of adding value to their practice, to the legal services that they're providing to their clients?
Yeah, I think there are a couple of tenets that are really important in understanding. I call it, like, Gen AI best used. The first one is you want the data environment that you're querying to be kind of closed and as pristine as possible. So like the research you're doing with GPT, Bob, I might caution you that if you're just using GPT out in out in the ethers, it's pulling from a lot of stuff, both accurate and inaccurate, and so you don't really know, and it hallucinates, and we've all heard those stories. But when applied via like Protege and LexisNexis, the way Noble is doing it on a contract database that is your contract set, and we've deduplicated, we've cleansed, we've created this really pristine closed environment. the answers become much, much more reliable.
Mm-hmm.
So that's like step one is a closed, clean environment. Make sure the data is good. Step two is if you can benefit from good metadata, it still helps tremendously. So this is, for us, we create this kind of expert quality guaranteed contract data that we're infusing into the LLM in the background. You don't even know it, but if you ask us, how many of my contracts are coming up for renewal at the end of the month, we're not just telling the LLM to go read 100,000 contracts and like come up with its answer. We're saying, here are the expiration dates of all of these contracts. The LLM is translating what next month means for us, which is super cool, right? Because before you had to filter and use search and do all these things. But the LLM understands your natural language question really well. But we're just reformulating that query to benefit from the metadata that we have. So I think step two is make sure that you still really need high quality metadata. And then step three is you do want, it's this use case part. You want to work with software where that the company is really thinking about your use cases, and you're pretty sure that they have data scientists and lawyers working together to reformulate prompts in the background. And what that means is, and I really love this. This is the most fun part of this, is that you're teaching these models parts of law that it doesn't otherwise know. And that is the thing, Bob, that unleashes all their power. So just one little example. So what do I mean by like teaching an LLM about law? Contracts have an operative nature, right? So if you have an MSA that has 3 amendments, an SOW, and that SOW has its own change order and amendment. Amendment number 3 can modify amendment number 2 and amendment number 1, but amendment 1 doesn't modify amendment 3. The SOW has its own amendment that can modify the SOW. Maybe it can replace, maybe it overrules, it overwrites, it changes. But there's almost like this mathematical equation part of the way contracts work. LLMs don't know that. They don't know the family. They don't understand. And I'm using contracts as an example because that's the space I've been really focused in. But that's all legal documents and kind of legal work have these operative natures. And if you infuse the LLMs with the knowledge of those operations behind the scenes, when someone's asking a question, the answers are like startlingly good. And so, one example, Bob, of one of the things we're doing is you can now come in and say, okay, so I've got a contract family and there's maybe 15, 20. Our biggest client has an 800 document contract family, one contract, over 800 documents. It's just been growing over time. And you can come in and ask a question like, what is, the current controlling limitation of liability provision? And it will say, well, the MSA said this, it was modified in amendment number 3. Amendment number 4 and 5 were silent on the issue. Amendment 7 replaced the sentence in whole. And so what you have now is this, and it gives you this version of like the rolled up summary of the transformation. And to do that historically was so much time. Mm-hmm. That's the time we don't want to pay lawyers for, which is putting the contract in order, sorting out all these documents, making sure that you've got them in place, and then finding the provisions in each one and whether or not they exist. You want them seeing the actual language and opining on what it means. That's the takeaway for me, Bob, is if we can cut down on the amount of time lawyers spend finding and organizing to allow them to focus and reason, we have really kind of created huge value. And that's what everyone should be looking for. But
so you're able to provide this. You're able to provide this this sort of more pristine data and able to then group it more logically, I guess you'd say, by the families that the different documents and different portions of this what makes up this master agreement, all the different contracts or whatever else. Reflect in order to provide results that understand the big picture as opposed to a single document or something like that.
Yeah. And I think it's, like data and documents are often relational. It's like, although they're different documents, there are things that merge them and combine them. If it's judge analytics, you want to know the sum total across a bunch of different opinions that a judge has given. So, rarely is a legal question really confined to one paragraph or one page. It's often combining lots of different pages and paragraphs and language and things. And that's the art of being a good lawyer, is understanding all this different context and then having an opinion on what actions to take or not take. I think the exciting part is it's been so hard to just get to the point where you could actually make those decisions because we have so much data. Hopefully what AI is doing right now is helping us get there a lot faster. And then we're still the decision makers. We're still the advisors. We're legal counsel. And that's the job that we went to law school to do. And maybe we get to do it again finally.
Yeah. I know we're starting to get a little bit short on time here, but it's something I wanted to, just one of those threads I wanted to go back to. You talked a little bit before about agentic AI, and if there was a hype cycle this year at Legal Week, I feel like it was agentic AI. Everybody was talking about agentic AI and its implications for legal and what it could mean. And of course, all the commercial models are talking about this as well. I'm just curious what your thoughts are on that, on sort of what are the differences between AI tools that kind of provide information or deliver results versus those that can somehow act independently to manage tasks?
So I think, the first part of that question, Bob, is what is agentic AI and what does that mean? And I've spent a lot of time thinking about that recently. I've asked a lot of LLMs that, and you get different answers. And it also turned out I asked my data scientists that, and they actually gave me kind of a history lesson in the name agency. But agentic AI or agency in AI isn't something new. It's been discussed. I mean, I go back to early Ravel days. Our head of engineering, Adam Pingle, he used to always laugh with me because he was like, lawyers don't want us to say AI, but he was like, AI has been in computer science textbooks since the 1960s. Like, it's nothing new. The theory isn't new. It was just our ability to do these things is finally here. For 2015, it was because of cloud computing and these models. Now it's because of, everything else that's going on, and NVIDIA chips and the ability that we have. But agentic AI is, I think the way everyone is trying to use it today is it's AI that's actually completing a task. It's not just answering a question or retrieving a document for you. And so, in day-to-day life, it's not just saying, what are the best restaurants in New York tonight? It's get me a reservation at the best French restaurant, in the neighborhood or something like that. And it goes ahead and it makes that reservation. Or maybe even better, you're a lawyer and you're waking up Monday morning and you're responsible for a bunch of contracts. And Monday morning, your AI agent is saying, good morning, Bob. You have 5 contracts up for renewal this week. Do you want to start reviewing them right now? And I'll pull those for you and give them to you. Or would you like me to send a renewal letter to company X because they're up for renewal at the end of the week, or terminate this? And so it's not just, it's helping, it's being proactive. It knows your role, it knows your job, and then it's taking action. What I think is what's interesting, and I think there's like a whole separate session we could have on this, is kind of the term agency in law versus what agency kind of means in AI. And, for those of us that went to law school and took the bar and all that, we learned a lot about express, implied agency. And the notion is you're allowing someone else to act as your agent, but there was still a certain amount of control and definition of the task. With AI agents, you're ceding control.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's kind of interesting as an attorney, is that you're ceding control to this agent to act on your behalf, and you didn't teach it, train it. And so I think there's a lot of questions that should be raised, that should be thought about. I think it's exciting, again, for very discrete, defined tasks that aren't bet the farm kind of things. But, I would not want my AI agent going to court for me anytime soon. I'll tell you that much.
No, we don't want that. Well, we've covered a lot of ground here today. Anything else on your mind in the wake of Legal Week, or more generally these days, or have we covered it all?
I think we did a lot. I think, one thing I was pining for during Legal Week, and I was thinking back to when you and I met the first time, Bob, and I don't know if it was a double A, double L, or Legal Week, but it was kind of in an era of kind of having to prove it. And the way that the young tech companies had to prove it is we demoed and we competed, and there were these competitions, and you were often one of the judges.
Yeah.
But we had to get up on stage and we had to show our products, and then we had to have a desk in a hallway that was super uncomfortable and nerve-wracking, and you had to let all these people come and show it to them, and then they got to vote, and there was a People's Choice Award and there was a Judges Award. So I think one of the things I miss about that early era of legal tech, and obviously legal technology is a part of every conference now, but when it was really the focal point of New York Legal Week, when it was called Legal Tech, it was a hard sit. You couldn't fake it.
Yeah.
You had to really be proving it and doing it, and I do miss those days, and I don't know how we get back to it, Bob, but I think there is a lot of value in that. Even
a lot of us miss it. Yeah. A lot of us miss it. There's some pretty major products out there in the market that nobody seems to be seeing, and yet they're pretty major. We talk about this a lot I do this Friday podcast, or kind of a roundtable where we talk about things going on in the legal tech world with some other people who write about this space, and it has become so unusual, frankly, for vendors. Well, most unusual is for vendors to give you a password. They used to just, as a legal tech writer, they would say, "Here's a password, go try it out. It'll expire in 30 days or whatever, and go try it out." And you dive in and try it out and write about it. Now they don't want to give you those passwords anymore. It's kind of strange. And even if they won't give you the password, sometimes they won't give you a live demo. They'll give you a very canned demo with slides and screenshots and that kind of thing, or a live demo under very controlled circumstances where you can see that they're kind of keying up the queries or whatever else they're going to kind of show you the results they want to show you, and it feels very contrived sometimes. So in that sense, it's very changed. Yeah.
Bob, still to this day, like my favorite and worst moments happen at the same time, and it's when we're doing like that first live run with a new client, and we've gotten their contracts and they're in our system, and I do develop a little bit of a story ex ante. I learn a little bit about their contracts, so the demo looks pretty good. But then I say, like, what would you want to know? And like you did when we were doing our demo, and like popped in a question, and I had no idea what that, like, I asked a novel question and I had to type it into the LLM and kind of let it rip. But I think when it's considered enough and thoughtful enough, you get to this moment where you do those, your stomach is turning. But then you're kind of surprised if you really put in the hard work, it spits out a good answer, and all of a sudden it's the best moment, and it's really cool. And so I live for those moments, although my heart hates me for them. But yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Nik, I really appreciate your taking the time today. Good to catch up with you, and good to talk about some of these issues with you.
Yeah, no, I think we should end on a note of positivity. It's a really exciting time. It doesn't mean we don't have to be careful, considerate. We should try things out. But there are going to be solutions that are really impressive. A few of them are already out there, and hopefully people are more excited than scared this time around, because I think we're all going to be using it if we're not already.
Oh, yeah. Oh, it is a very exciting time. No question about that. And it's only going to get more interesting over the next couple of years.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening to today's show. I hope you enjoyed it. If you'd like to share your own thoughts or comments, please do so by messaging us on LinkedIn or other social media, or email me directly, ambrogi@gmail.com. If you're a fan of the show, please leave us a review. LawNext is a production of LawNext Media. I'm your host, Bob Ambrogi, and I hope you'll join us next time for another episode of LawNext.